Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, John Wachter. Let's get you informed. So, today's podcast, we're going to be talking about whether or not there are too many flags in the league and whether or not the penalties corresponding to those flags are ruining the game. I've heard a lot of talks of that there are just too many flags and it's just not enjoyable to watch the NFL anymore. And I'm not of that opinion, but I can see where it's coming from. So I really wanted to make a podcast to talk about that subject. I don't have any particular stats, which are a thing that I oftentimes rely a little bit too heavily on in podcasting and just talking to the NFL talking about the NFL with my friends and things of that nature. So I did some digging for stats, but I don't want to bring them up because I think anybody could just get on here and just talk about stats that they found online from multiple different sources and things of that nature. So and also, I just think it would be boring if I was just telling you, 3 years ago, defensive pass interference was called whatever. I don't have the numbers, 4.5 times a game, and now it's up to 6.2. That's probably not even close to the right stats, but I just wanted to make something up. That'd be boring for me to just talk about for 10, 15 minutes. So I don't have any stats with me or prepared or anything like that. This is all going to be personal opinion on things that I've observed. I watch a large amount of games. I watch as many games as I can. I'm just invested in the league, invested in the players, whether that be for fantasy or just because I like watching the sport. Even though my team in particular is doing bad, I just like watching other teams. I like the sport, and these are just opinions on things that I've observed. So with that said, let me just jump in. I think that some flags are an absolute joke, and I mention them pretty much every week to my girlfriend who has to deal with me mentioning them every week. Things like taunting, particularly there's one that I've heard called, not too often, but I've heard it called, it makes me lose my mind. They'll say taunting, they'll say the number, pointing, like after you make like a hit or like, just pointing at an opponent is now a penalty. And I think that anything taunting, there's not too much you could say. Now, there are some exceptions. Of course, you don't want to hear any like degrading or like racist comments on the field, then of course I feel like that should be a flag. But other than that, just trash talking and pointing or even showing off in somebody's face, that's all part of the game. Anytime anybody who's played a game like just in the backyard, some pickup football with your friends or your friends' friends, a lot of the fun of it, now you're gonna have a fun time playing the sport, of course, but a lot of the fun is getting to talk trash and between friends. Now, of course, people on opposite teams aren't necessarily friends, and that can escalate into fights and things of that nature. But these are grown men, and they see each other, for 4 hours, 3 hours, whatever, however long the game may be, on one Sunday, 2 Sundays at most, if they're in the same division. These are grown men, and they should be able to handle a little bit of trash talk amongst each other. I don't feel like there should be penalties for anything like that, unless, like I said, if they're saying something really degrading or just something you shouldn't say to anybody. Something like whether that be racist or just bringing up, if there happens to be a player that has personal problems in the media and people are bringing stuff like that up or anything like that, then yes, that goes a little bit too far. But just talking trash and pointing, I hate it. Similar situation, celebration penalties I think should not be a thing. Now, maybe there should be a time limit to how long a celebration can be, but I feel like if you're in the NFL, which is the highest level of competition for your sport, and you score a touchdown, it doesn't matter how many you're scoring. You could be a guy that scores, you can be a guy like Des Bryant or Antonio Brown, scoring 15, 16 times in a season or whatever, on the high side. You should be able to celebrate however you want. You're beating the best of the best to get to the touchdown. And some of these guys only get a couple in their entire career. Let them go out there and do their little dance, or I even feel like you should still be able to use the ball as a prop. I remember not even too long ago, guys like Chad Ochocinco, when they scored, it was fun to watch them score, but it was just as fun to see what they were going to do after it. Things like he would use the pylon to like putt the ball and things of that sort, just silly little stuff like that. It's not hurting the game. He's just out there having fun. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's fun to see. Even when it's against your team, like it was against mine a few times, it's still fun to see a guy like that out there. That's one of the things that draws a lot of people to Cam Newton this year, is he's going out there and he seems to be the only guy having fun in what many are dubbing, the no fun league now. So also it's an oxymoron to come out there and flag somebody for celebrating, excessive celebration, because the mindset is that it's delaying the game, but he's already done it, and now you have to go out there to talk about the penalty. So that's delaying the game even further than what it would be just watching the guy do it. I mean, and it's taking twice as long to get through the penalty after already watching the guy do the celebration. You might as well just let him do it. If you want to fine him, then I guess do that. But and that's another thing that's just gone too far in the league is the fining for hits and things like wearing memorabilia, or I forgot exactly who it was. He had the eye black underneath to pay tribute to somebody he had known that had died, or something of that nature. I don't remember the exact story. You getting fined for stuff like that, for respecting somebody like that, I think it's very messed up. I don't think that should be something that's happening. And fines for hits in particular, especially in a game that is a contact sport where you're wearing pads, and everybody who gets into it knows from an early age. A lot of guys in the NFL played, pee-wee football, or I mean, pretty much all of them played at least high school football at their earliest, as the latest early starting point. Everybody, of course, played in college and all that. So when you get into that, you know what you're getting yourself into. So I don't understand. Now, that said, you shouldn't be able to headbutt a receiver and things of that nature like you used to be able to do in the 80s. You watched old school clips of like the Raiders and the Steelers, those old school defenses out there just pretty much killing people. That's good. That's a good thing to have. You like the flag, like, all right, attempted murder on the field, that should remain. I'm not saying get rid of that penalty. That's one that I would like to see called, but it's just there's a question of if you're even allowed to tackle the quarterback anymore in certain situations. And it seems like there's favoritism towards certain people. I'm not going to bring anybody in particular up. A lot of people complain about Tom Brady, getting easy penalties and things of that nature, but it's not just him. It's a lot of it seems to be the marquee quarterbacks, the big guys that all the fans are supposed to know. There's a story about Cam Newton not getting calls, and the referee said that he was too young. I'm not sure how true that is, but it does seem that there's favoritism sometimes, and maybe it just goes from crew to crew. But in general, the tackle box is so small. I don't know how. First of all, I don't know how you're supposed to tackle anybody. I think you have to tackle them in the stomach. It's pretty much the only place this like above the waist and below the neck area, so you have like a third of their body to tackle, and then people wonder why so many people are breaking tackles and nobody on defense seems to be able to tackle anymore. It's impossible. You can't target anything. Receivers can't be considered defenseless, but to not be considered defenseless, they have to take like 3 steps or something. But you have to like let the guy catch the ball and then see you and then like give a thumbs up to you before you can tackle him. It's ridiculous. It's extremely difficult to play defense in the NFL, and that's why I think a lot of people are saying it's ruining the league. There's guys throwing for 5,000 yards almost every year now. There's multiple people throwing for 5,000 yards in single seasons. Like Drew Brees and Tom Brady threw for 5,000 yards in the same season. They both broke the record, in the same season, which is crazy. But you're not allowed to tackle anybody. You're not allowed to hit the quarterback. You're not allowed to hit a receiver while he's trying to make the catch anymore. So yeah, it is ruining defense. And maybe certain people just like watching the offense, but I would love to see some calls where the defense is allowed to do something. With that said, that's where I think the league is going to be going soon. My prediction is, so it's every year they've been adding new penalties and more, but I feel like at this point, and I was watching Monday Night Football, and I remember there was a call, there was a holding call. It was kind of ticky-tacky. It was on the other side of a running play that the Browns had run, so it didn't affect the play at all. It wasn't like a very blatantly like obvious hold. It was just something you could see pretty much every play. Like they say there's holding every play. It's just, you make it obvious. It's when it gets called. This one wasn't an obvious one, and it didn't affect the play at all. And it was John Gruden was talking about how it was just kind of ridiculous that stuff like that gets called so often now. The team's trying to build momentum, not having a lot of momentum going. The Browns have struggled to run the ball all year, and they finally, break off a decent-sized run, and then they're getting called back for a hold that didn't affect it at all, and that kills the momentum. You just had that big run. You get called back 10 yards, you're not going to run it again. Now you got to pass because you got called back 10 yards. I don't remember what they did directly after that, but I know it killed their momentum in the situation. Another problem being, not for that game in particular, but just in general, we've seen a lot of just blown calls. Flags are finalized after they're called. A flag can get thrown, and they can pick it up and say, all right, never mind. But after they called the flag, it's finalized. You can't take it back. So that means even if you're watching a replay and it's incredibly obvious, you don't have the ability to challenge it or anything of that nature. I think that that's something that you should be able to do. They don't want that to be something that delays the game further, but there's with so many blown calls this year alone, that seems every week that there's when I log into my Facebook, there's 400 pages just sharing this play where the referees were just so wrong about a play, and it's something that they really need to fix because it's determining the outcome of games. There's been a few games that have been determined directly by the outcome of the referees, in the past few years, and having the ability to challenge things like that and limit it in some way, because you don't want 6-hour games, but limit it in some capacity. Give somebody the right to challenge a blown call or a missed call, and that will really fix a lot. Another idea is to bring in younger guys to be referees and things like that, but that's getting into a whole nother conversation that I'm not going to cover today. I don't know, something needs to be done so that referees can't determine the outcome of the game directly. And there's sometimes it's very hard to call a game in real time like that. That's why we have the technology. We have cameras everywhere. One suggestion I would have is you'll be watching a game and the team will challenge a play, and they'll get the head of officiating on there to explain what the call should be and why, and then the referees come out and don't do the call that he just stated. He's the head of officiating. If he's watching all the challenges anyway, he might as well be able to just tell them what the right call would be. He can give them the exact same explanation. It's frustrating to hear the right call and then not see the right call. I guess I don't want everybody. I guess I don't want one guy to have the right to watch over all the teams. But, just in case there's a conflict, like if he has a bias towards a certain team or things of that nature, maybe they want a checks and balances type system. But already as it is, the referees are controlling too much of the game. So if they have a bias, it's the same thing. I'm not saying anybody has a bias. I don't believe that to be the case. But, it's just the thought process to me, it doesn't add up. So with that said, my prediction is that in the next few years, the league's going to have to actually start taking away some of these flags that they've brought in. A lot of these flags were brought in with great ideas in mind. They just wanted to make the game safer, make it cleaner, and things of that nature. But it's to the point where pretty much every play not every play there's flags being thrown, but you can see multiple flags pretty much every drive, and it's too predictable that you're going to see a flag. You can watch anytime you see a big punt return or a big kick return or anything of that nature. I'm just waiting for a flag to be thrown. It's very rare to see a big play happen without a holding flag, and it's normally something they'll have a block in the back or a little holding flag. Sometimes it's obvious and you want to call it, but if it doesn't affect the play, it shouldn't be called and things of that nature. And like I said, I think over the next few years they're going to have to start taking away some of these flags because it is ruining the product for a lot of people. When you're seeing so much of the refs, we're not turning on the game to watch the refs. We're turning on the game to watch the players on the field. Seeing so much of the refs is hurting the product, and I think that they're going to have to do something in the next couple years to keep the safety of the sport, but also take away from the amount of time that there's not the sport on the field. Because right now the games are getting longer, and the time actually being played on the field is getting shorter somehow at the same time. So that's definitely not a trend that they would like to continue. With that said, I'm gonna wrap this up. Quick sneak preview for my next podcast. I'm not sure the exact date. I would really love to get it done this week, but I haven't talked to him in a few days. But I'm gonna have my first guest on the show, and we're gonna talk either this week or next week. We're gonna talk about the state of the playoffs is just in a complete flux right now. Pretty much anybody can make the playoffs in both the AFC and the NFC, even more so in the AFC, in my opinion. So we're going to kind of break it down, check out some if the season ended today type scenarios, and then present who we think are going to make it. So my first guest, hopefully by Saturday, if not, definitely next week. But be on the lookout for that. I'll share it, of course, and do all the advertising I would normally do, but just wanted to give a sneak preview there. It's not always just going to be me on here, but I wanted to at least get a few of just me before I started bringing some guests on. I got a couple people I'm interested in, so hopefully it goes well, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you for spending the time to listen to this, and I hope that you continue to listen to me, and I hope you have a great day. Once again, just thank you for listening. See ya.